Raleigh Tyler is an FX man, the movie's master of make-believe. He can show you 1,000 ways to die. But now somebody wants Raleigh Tyler to do it for real. But someone else is writing the script and casting him as the killer. FX.
Hello guys, I hope you're well. Welcome back to my channel called Blast and the Past. And this time around I have another double feature. This will be a review of two films, FX from 1986.
It's FX, rated R.
And FX2 from 1991. So it's direct sequel.
Nobody does them better. FX2.
Both starring two Bryans, Bryan Brown and Bryan Dennehy. So without further ado, buckle up. You may want to grab some popcorn if you feel like it, and let's get the ball rolling, shall we?
Bryan Brown, Bryan Dennehy, The Deadly Art of Illusion.
Both FX films are very good pieces of cinema. So I have to say that probably the first one is a bit better because it was also fresh, a fresh idea. Basically it's about a special effects guy who works in Hollywood and he's hired by special forces, by the government to create a fake murder. Because in the witness protection program there is a very important mobster and they want to feign his killing in order for the other gangsters not to try to get rid of him.
We want to stage a fake assassination, Raleigh, and we want you to supervise it.
Who's the we?
And of course nothing goes according to plan, everything goes awry, and our main protagonist, our hero, is being chased by everybody because he is accused of murdering the guy. And
What if someone takes a shot at me?
You are 100% protected, I give you my word.
what happens later on, so you have to give it a go, but I can assure you that it's quite alright.
Done anything.
What if he put in real bullets?
If one person suspects.
Sorry, Raleigh. No loose ends.
And the next one, the sequel, features also Bryan Brown in the main role as this special effect guy, this magician of Hollywood. And the plot is a little bit different, but it also involves some murder.
For the special request,
You want to bait a trap, but make him think that the girl is alone, except it won't be the girl, it'll be me.
has got him rocking with the
A
punches.
lot of red herrings, kind of a detective story, but it's lighter in its tone. So it's a little bit a different piece of cinema. The first one is much more serious, much more gritty and dark perhaps, more violent. The second one also, it has more dramatic moments in its narrative, especially later on. However, I think that it tried to copy the popular back then body action comedy genre. So there is a nice chemistry between two Bryans.
How could you do that to me? 5 years I waited, I finally got you.
In the first one, of course, they also work together, but they don't share too much of a screen time, that's for sure.
Hi, Raleigh. My name is Leo.
In the second one, it's a little bit better in this regard. Like I said, so it's a little bit lighter than its predecessor, it's a lighter piece of entertainment. However, both of them are recommended. And if you like the first one, so it's hard not to follow it up with the second one in terms of the screening, in terms of watching it. So it's a no-brainer. It's just a quickie. If you like the first one, FX from 1986, so you should give the second one also a go. Because it's nice to come back to the same, again, universe, the same franchise, the same world with the same protagonists, and see how everything panned out for them later.
He was the movie's #1 special effects man. Now, he's retired.
So the first one highly recommended, the second one also recommended. Maybe not so vividly, maybe it's not exactly on a par with its predecessor, but it's still really a full throttle, no holds barred ride. The first one, FX, in 1986, it was quite a surprise at the box office because it cost around $10 million to make and it grossed 20 worldwide, so that was a nice result. Even if you add the prospective marketing costs, which usually is half of the budget, so it earned $5 million So it's a pretty nice paycheck for the producers, for the people involved in this motion picture. And later on, 5 years later, they decided to follow it up with a sequel, FX2. That was in 1991, and the budget was a tad bigger because it was $16.4 million, but it grossed around 21, so it wasn't such a smash success as the first one.
FX2, The Deadly Art of Illusion, rated PG-13, starts Friday, May 10th at theaters everywhere.
However, from what I've gathered, both of the films were very popular on the VHS tapes, on the home video market, in the video rentals.
See me.
So I think they had long legs on the home video
The
market.
internet is an historically authentic recreation of a video store, a specialty shop where customers exchanged money for the short-term use of videos in an archaic system called renting.
And that also, at that time, it was very important to make additional profit, to squeeze this proverbial lemon as much as possible, to milk it to the fullest, to the full extent. And perhaps that's why, although it was half a decade later, they decided to film the sequel, and I think it's for the better. Maybe it's not equally entertaining, but it's also very good, and it's like a caper film. There's also a complex investigation with many red herrings along the way, many deceits and many foul plays, so you can never be sure of the outcome until the very last moment, the very last closing scene of the film, especially if it comes to the second one.
Jesus Christ, Mike!
We could say that both films, but the first one in particular is a little bit meta, because it presents Hollywood, the Hollywood industry, behind the scenes, how the special effects worked at that time. And we all know in the 1980s, in the 1990s as well, so that was the staple of the Hollywood biz. Unlike now, when we use CGI, computer-generated effects to feign reality. But before that, so it was a completely different story. Regarding the backstage of the Hollywood industry, so in this scene the police are investigating the house, the flat of the main protagonist, and they see all the props, all the costumes, all the things used in this business, and this is nice because you can have a deeper insight into that. So we as the cinema lovers, but only as the fans, the watchers, the passive ones, we are not aware of many details which take place behind the scenes. And this is perhaps a good story for a book, and it will be very captivating, because in this film we have only some tidbits, and I think that there are many things which are not discussed in the open forum.
They need him to get away with murder. He's Raleigh Tyler, master of make-believe.
We want to stage a fake assassination, Raleigh.
As you can probably guess, the main character, who is a special effects guy, is also very good at setting up explosions, and his knowledge of pyrotechnics and explosive materials is also commendable. So in here he makes good use of this expertise, and he creates a diversion in order to run away from the police which are chasing him. And later on we have a very nice action sequence. It's a car chase, and it's a pretty complex one, pretty elaborate one, a very well developed one, and also filmed in a very good manner. So once again, props to the director, because he was the right person at the helm of the right project, we would say. But also the same praise goes to the director of the second one, who was a different person. And I'm afraid that nobody out of them has been very successful in the Hollywood business. However, on the other hand, if I'm not mistaken, they've had several nice projects. But perhaps we could say that the FX films, they are the apex of their careers. It is also great to see not only the backstage of the Hollywood industry, how the special effects were made, all the details, but also how they could be applied in practice, in real life situations. So that's why it's fantastic in the first one, but in the other one, in the sequel, I think they went a little bit over the board with that, because he's more like MacGyver, like a magician. So sometimes it's stretched, because he must have predicted so many things, and so many things had to go according to his plan for that to have worked out, but this is only film fiction.
Cue ball, corner pocket.
Nonetheless, regardless of those vices, potential negative aspects, it is really fantastic because you can notice that love for the cinema, towards the cinematography, when you see the special effects being applied behind the scene, but also in real dangerous situations. How you can whistle out of problems by just using your knowledge, your expertise, if you are into this kind of business, by using also different tools like kitchen appliances. Substances, detergents, chemical substances. If you put them all together, so you can always make something out of it, just to get out of a dangerous situation unscathed, unharmed, intact. And this is additional added value to this film. Just the premise alone, that this is about a special effect artist, specialist, a special effect guy who is forced to fight for his life, for his survival, and he uses the things he knows best. So in this case, FX, special effects, put into real life, into practice. Both films are full of situations when one of the protagonists is double-crossed, somebody dupes him, somebody makes a fool of him, or frames him or her. However, the first one, it's particularly interesting because it was like The Fugitive with Harrison Ford, but bear in mind that The Fugitive was from the 1990s. Perhaps it was released in 1993, if I'm not mistaken.
Checkpoints will go up at 15 miles. Your fugitive's name is Dr. Richard Kimball.
And in here, we could say that FX is its predecessor in terms of the plot, in terms of how the main character is framed, and he needs to clear his name and fight for his life, for survival. So, although the premise, the basic idea is a little bit different, because obviously you don't have a doctor, but we have a person from a completely different field of studies, nonetheless, that's exactly what makes it even more interesting and captivating, thanks to this additional gimmick. So using special effects to get out of different situations. I was pretty surprised by that. Because The Fugitive, so it was nothing original in the 1990s. Even before, we have this underrated gem of a film, FX, with 2 Bryans. And later on, the sequel, FX2, so it wasn't so innovative. It wasn't a typical cat and mouse chase, but it was more of a buddy film. So despite some dramatic moments later on in the narrative, so it's rather lighter in its tone, but it's still very captivating. However, you have to suspend the disbelief. Like I've said, some of the situations are a little bit stretched, so it's a tall tale, but it works for the benefit of the film, because I saw some of the plot twists coming, but not 2 final ones, to be honest. So, although that wasn't the first time I saw it last weekend, I still didn't remember all the details for some reason. It still caught me off guard, it caught me by surprise. So I think that this is one of the best recommendations the sequel could get, that you may come back to it and still be surprised with the development of the plot and with the plot twists. If I may say so, I would highly recommend watching both of them. Regarding the picture quality of this DVD release, so here we have the first FX film on the screen, and maybe you can say that it's pretty serviceable, it is okay, and I like this shot, for example, so it shows how good director was, because even this, you see, the camera movement, so this is one long shot, it's not cut into several ones, so I like this kind of directory. Anyhow, coming back to the picture quality again, so it is decent. The details are more or less there, considering the format that is only a mere DVD release, so all in all, I would say that I am satisfied with that, although it's not jaw-dropping by any means, and neither is the second one on DVD, unfortunately. However, it does its job. and I was just having fun watching both of them, like a double feature, one after another, back to back. So that was great, that was fantastic. Coming back to the same characters, to a similar plot, yet with a different take, more like a body action comedy.
With guys
There's someone else in the room.
who don't like him hanging around.
Hey, Raleigh.
Now, very briefly, some pieces of trivia featured on the IMDb website. So the first one is that special effects man John Steers claimed that he had been offered money by government agencies to simulate various things as depicted in the film. That's interesting.
He'll need every trick from every movie he's ever made.
Where are you, Tyler?
Just to get even.
Now, another piece of trivia regarding the performance of Bryan Dennehy, who is featured on the screen. Actually, Bryan Dennehy doesn't appear until 44 minutes into the film, so that's pretty late. And the main encounter between the protagonists happens even later on in the narrative, pretty surprisingly, although both of them are featured on the main cover as the main leads. This is funny, but I think that the sequel goes a pretty similar route.
What do you think, eh? Not bad, huh? Always wanted my own gin milk. Yeah.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have the sequel on the screen, and this is the initial sequence, but this is fantastic. You can see those fantastic shots, this opening one, presenting the whole city at night. I love it. I love this atmosphere, and I love this attention paid to the details, to every single piece of the film. Like in this case, they really didn't have to do it, but they decided to open the film on a grand scale, on a big scale. The bird's eye view on the city is fantastic. It's so climatic, so atmospheric that you jump right into the film and you are succumbed into it. You are immersed into it, and that's just the mere beginning. And later on, I can assure you that it gets much better. Also in terms of the plot and how gripping. And this scene in particular is one of the funniest ones, so no, I haven't made any mistake. This is still FX, the sequel from 1991. However, you can see that something is probably off. What the heck is this character? Who the heck, or what the heck is this creature? You see? And that's just the mere beginning. And this is a film within a film. And it's not a spoiler, I hope, but this is interesting how well it plays with the formula, with the convention of this film industry and the behind the scene details. And it shows how passionate their screenwriters and the director were, that they tried to really entertain the viewer and also show some tidbits of the Hollywood industry, by the way. Props to them. Regarding the opening sequence, so according to IMDb, although set in New York, the majority of the film was shot in Toronto over an 11-week period during the spring and summer of 1990. The location required some extra effort to sell the illusion. In fact, streets in Toronto's Chinatown had to be dirtied up to match their New York counterparts. But at least I'm pretty sure that the opening sequence, it is New York, as you can clearly see, but the majority of it, apparently it was shot in Canada. There's not too much I can say about the picture quality, which I haven't said already about the FX1. We could say that it is on a par with the first one. There's nothing special in it, nothing to write home about. However, for a DVD release, especially a very old one, because you can even see those stickers in here from a video rental shop, those were used items and they were on sale. Still, I'm pretty satisfied with it. And actually, before the last time I saw both of them in this double feature, I had been looking forward to owning them, to having them for a very long time. So props to my body, because actually I had that pleasure of not only having a chance to see those films, but also of having them in my collection. So really, chapeau bas. Thank you very much.
Dylan! Du verdammter Penner!
And now some pieces of trivia regarding the sequel. So the first one is that when the film was released, it came under fire in the media from effects artists who claimed it was giving away trade secrets. Props to IMDb. Like I said, so they show some tidbits, but probably not all of them, because a real magician never reveals their secrets. And another piece of trivia, perhaps this time related to the more lighter tone of the sequel. The film was shot as an R-rated film, but was edited down to PG-13 to attract a wider audience. This was partially due to the success of the edited network television premiere of the original film and the younger audience it gained from its subsequent airings. So the first one was successful, hence the continuation, hence the decision to follow it up with a sequel, although that's surprising that it took them 5 years. But better late than never, I suppose.
You're going the wrong way!
Now about a recurring theme of the sequel, it is this clown. It is kind of a big doll, which mimics the movements of the owner, of the person who is wearing that suit at the time. And this clown plays a very important role in the narrative, in many scenes, in the middle of the narrative and later on. So this is a pretty funny gimmick, something out of the box, and this is what I remembered about the sequel. When I saw it for the first time, so that stayed in my mind, and later on when I rewatched it, so I remembered that there was this clown featured throughout the whole narrative. And like I said, it's a pivotal point of the whole plot. And why? You will have to give it a go and see why exactly it is so important. Also, you can see that thanks to this clown, so the tone of the film is lighter. It's more like a comedy, like a buddy action film, although there are some dramatic scenes, so rest assured, it's not all a bed of roses and it's not such a pleasant viewing, although the rating of the film apparently, so it had to be toned down before its premiere. However, you can see that this is just one more thing which makes it more audience-friendly, younger audience-friendly. We also have a character of a kid who is very important in the whole story. So all in all, it's a little bit different in its approach towards the story, towards the genre, but maybe it's for the better. At least they try to introduce some variety and not to make a copycat of the first one, not to make a carbon copy. So this is always good, as long as it works out in practice, and I think that in the case of the sequel, it did. And it is in the sequel in which we have the scene where they use a modem connection to send the data from one point to another, and this is really so retro, so vintage. I remember those times when you had to connect by a modem, by using this very archaic, now very obsolete device, and wow, that was a disaster back then, the bandwidth. And you see, but it worked for the simple data at least. And thanks to that, so at that time it was like a virtual reality to us, to some of us at least, our generation. But right now it's pretty funny, it's pretty hilarious. That's why I love this added value of the older films. So it was a great pleasure watching the sequel after so many decades after its initial release, because you have those artifacts, thanks to which you may have a walk down memory lane. In a good way, in a good meaning.
No, cut it! Cut it! God, this is completely unusable. You effects guys are gonna be the death of me.
And as you all know, I'm a big fan of retro, of vintage, and in this case, so in this particular scene, in the first one, they are using a modem to connect to the internet and to transfer the information. So this is so funny from today's perspective, when everything is online, everything is digital. But back then, back in the day, for example, you had to go to a library to use the internet. So that was unthinkable. That was incredible, that you had access to this window towards a completely different universe, a different world. So you would enter like a different dimension. And that's why I love those old films. So this one, it was still set in the 1980s, the second decade. And the internet was a novelty because it was created in the 1970s. And regarding the internet, as they say, the rest is history, isn't it? As always guys, thank you very much for your attention. I hope that you have enjoyed this short review, this double feature. If you have liked it, please give this video the thumbs up, Please share your comments on both FX films, the first one and the second one, in the comment section below. Also on my performance, should you feel like it. And please subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed to it. And I hope to see you guys next time. Cheers, take care.
FX2 will feature a nationwide television ad campaign with spots appearing on NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, MTV, VH1, and ESPN. There'll be a full-color theatrical size poster, ad reprints,